You left your resume on the copier. That's how it started. Not with the promotion list, not with the performance review, with my manager, Russ, hovering over my desk, holding a crumpled piece of paper between two fingers like it smelled funny. His voice had that oily tone he reserved for pretending he cared. Looking for new opportunities, Danny? I smiled. The fake kind I'd mastered after 7 years under fluorescent lights and soul erosion. Oh, that's from months ago. I lied smoothly. Just cleaning out my files. He nodded like he believed me. He didn't. We both knew it. That resume wasn't old. I'd printed it 20 minutes ago during lunch because something felt off. Something in the way they'd stopped looping me into key meetings. Something in how my direct reports suddenly had dual leads. Something in the way my key project, a 6-month overhaul of our entire internal data pipeline, my name slowly disappearing from the footers of the deck. So no, Russ wasn't the start. The rot started months ago. He was just the mold that made it visible. A week later, I was in the stairwell, my sanctuary, eating a cold peanut butter sandwich in silence when I heard Claire and Martin 2 floors above, gossip echoing down the concrete shaft like a courtroom mic. "She's good," Claire said. "But just adequate." Martin snorted. "Yeah, just adequate, Danny. That's what Marcia calls her." Then footsteps. Then silence. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just sat there, holding that sad sandwich like a tranquilized raccoon, wondering how long they'd been saying it. How long Marcia, our VP, had been branding me with a corporate scarlet letter in meetings I wasn't invited to. That night, I Googled defamation statutes. I didn't find what I needed. What I did find, though, was something better. Something profitable. See, corporate America loves inside jokes. And just adequate Danny had become one. They'd started dropping it in email subject lines, bullet points, project names. I even found it scribbled on a post-it stuck to my office chair, task for J.A.D. But I knew where this train wreck was heading. They weren't just mocking me. They were rewriting the narrative, undermining my next performance review before it was even scheduled. So I did what I do best. I outworked them. I stayed late, pulled system logs, compiled timestamps, and built a dossier. Every instance, every usage, every breadcrumb of condescension baked into company property. And then I trademarked it. Every syllable, every pixel, every bitter giggle. What they didn't know yet was that they'd already racked up a small fortune in usage fees, and I was going to make them pay for every condescending breath. But the real fun, that started when accounting opened the invoice and called me, choking on their decaf. "Hi, this is Kara from finance. We received something from you. Is this a joke?" "Oh no," I said sweetly. "That's just the adequate beginning." Kara from finance called back 5 minutes later, sounding like someone had just slapped the calculator out of her hand. "So you're invoicing the company for internal phrase usage?" "Yes," I said, swirling my tea with a pen. Specifically, an authorized use of a federally registered trademark. Retroactive to August. Silence. The kind where you can almost hear someone blinking. I don't even know how to code that in the system. That's not my problem, Kara. That's above my pay grade, or I guess was. Click. That's when I knew they didn't take it seriously yet, so I made them. The next morning, I BCC'd the invoice to legal, then to HR, and to Marcia herself with a little sticky note attached. "Please forward to brand usage compliance." No threats, no angry emails, just polite, precise, and corporate enough to sound like a risk they couldn't quite calculate. By lunch, the panic was viral. Russ showed up at my cubicle, his mouth twitching like a malfunctioning garage door. "Hey, Danny, got a second? For you? Always." He closed the door to the conference room like he was locking us in a submarine. "Listen, you've got everyone spooked. What is this trademark thing? It's real, you're serious. I'm billing at the internal usage rate outlined in the licensing addendum I uploaded to the company SharePoint last night. You can find it under Legal IP Just Adequate Trademark. Jesus Christ, Danny, this could be considered sabotage." I leaned forward, elbows on the table. No. Sabotage is gutting someone's promotion chances by weaponizing mediocrity. This is commerce. He stared at me like I'd grown horns. "I'm not trying to hurt the company, Russ," I added softly. "Just reclaiming my narrative." He didn't say a word, just got up, left the door hanging open behind him. Later that day, something strange happened. Angela from HR came by with a latte. I hadn't spoken to her since the whiteboard incident. She placed it gently on my desk like a peace offering. "Soy vanilla," she said, forced smile intact. "Your favorite, right?" "Used to be," I said. before I found out my performance was a punchline. "Oh, Danny, I think there's been a big misunderstanding." I said. "Does legal misunderstand cease and desists?" Her smile froze like bad botox. That night, when I logged in to finish prepping evidence for my second invoice, I saw it. Someone had tried to delete the shared Slack emoji of my face with the text, "just adequate." But it was too late. I'd already screen recorded its use by 5 directors, timestamped, and filed. And that's when it clicked. They weren't afraid of the money. They were afraid of the paper trail. Someone, multiple someones, had turned me into a case study of how to invisibly destroy a career. Slowly, politely, and legally. And I had just flipped the script. But I didn't know yet just how far they were willing to go to bury what I had uncovered. Not until the anonymous Dropbox link showed up in my inbox. Subject line: "You didn't hear this from me." At first, I thought it was a prank. The Dropbox link sat there in my inbox like a loaded gun with no fingerprints, no sender, no message, just the subject line: "You didn't hear this from me." The kind of thing you ignore unless you're me, underpaid, underestimated, and already halfway down the rabbit hole. So, naturally, I clicked. Inside was a single folder. No title, one file, quarterly promotion review internal notes PDF. I opened it. And the moment I read the first line, my throat went dry. Daniela M., strong work ethic, too independent, pushes back on direction, lacks culture alignment, too independent. They turned my biggest strength into a liability. Pushes back meant I didn't let Russ rewrite my audit findings to cover up his errors. Culture alignment was HR speak for not passive enough to be controllable. I scrolled. My name came up again and again. Snide comments from execs, undocumented complaints, whole threads of back-channel feedback they'd never shared with me, compiled like a secret autopsy of my career. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was at the bottom. A bullet point from Marcia, dated 2 weeks before promotions were finalized. "Let's keep Daniela where she is. Promoting her would upset Russ's org chart, and she lacks the polish we want in client-facing leadership. Just adequate has become our internal shorthand, ironic, but fitting." I sat in my apartment for an hour, just staring at it. The words ironic but fitting echoed in my head like a fire alarm in an empty church. I felt humiliated, sure, but deeper than that, I felt engineered, like they'd planted a reputation and waited for it to bloom into self-sabotage. They wanted me to stay quiet, stay small, billable but forgettable. Instead, I printed the whole document, slid it into a red folder, labeled it Discovery, and then, like divine timing, my attorney called. "Hey, Danny, we got a bite." "A bite?" "Yeah," he chuckled. "One of the trademark license inquiries came from a shell corp. We traced the IP. Guess who? Russ." Bingo. Looks like he tried to secure a retroactive usage license under a fake LLC. I exhaled through my teeth. That slimy bastard. Not only was he scrambling to cover his tracks, he was trying to bury the paper trail behind legal smog. That was corporate instinct at its finest. Never apologize, never explain, just launder the narrative. I stared at the Dropbox folder again. Thought about deleting it, thought about leaking it, thought about stapling it to a baseball bat and bringing it to the next staff meeting. But instead, I wrote a speech. A short one, cold, clinical, worded with legal precision and emotional subtext like a scalpel, because next Thursday was the quarterly all-hands, and they'd asked me to lead the opening culture share. Funny how they still trusted me with a microphone. They wouldn't after what I planned to say. But that wasn't even the twist. The real twist, the next morning. Red folder was gone, taken from my locked desk drawer, and someone had left a post-it in its place. No signature. Just 4 words. Adequate doesn't mean quiet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed replaying every interaction of the last 2 weeks, every smirk, every vague compliment, every "will circle back." My brain was a projector looping corporate gaslight in a max. Whoever left that note knew everything. Not just about the trademark, but the file. Dropbox link, my drawer. They'd been in my space, and they were watching. The next morning, I walked into the office with that strange electric calm you feel right before a tornado hits. I passed Russ by the espresso machine. He avoided eye contact, but I noticed his collar was sweat stuck to his neck. Good, let him marinate in it. By 9:15, my phone buzzed. Slack message from Marcia. "Hey, Danny, excited to hear your culture share this morning. Just keep it light and fun, okay?" Grinning face with smiling eyes, light and fun. Right, At 10 a.m., the company gathered on Zoom, over 120 video tiles, a mosaic of forced smiles and bored eyes, sipping from company-branded water bottles like we were cult members hydrating before a sacrifice. My face filled the screen. I smiled. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny. Most of you know me as the analytics lead for the Chase integration, or maybe you know me as the one who fixed the Salesforce crash in March. But lately, some of you have started calling me something else. I paused, just long enough, just adequate, a few nervous chuckles. One person muted too late. I clicked share screen. The slideshow began. Slide 1, a screenshot of the internal Slack channel, the emoji of my face, the JAD, reactions under my update posts. Slide 2, the footnote from the internal performance review, to independent, culture misalignment. Slide 3, a clean, bold image of the just adequate trademark certificate. Silence, not polite silence. The kind where people stop breathing. I let the moment sit. Here's what's fun about irony, I said, cool as ice water. If you use it enough, it becomes documentation. I clicked again. Slide 4, a redacted version of the invoice. Line items, usage counts, final amount, $3,128.54 now, before anyone panics. I'm not suing the company. Yet, this is a business relationship. I've trademarked the phrase that some of you have built a brand around, and I'm offering a licensing option, fair market value, internal use only. People were frozen. A few cameras went black. A few messages flew across private channels. I could practically smell Russ sweating through his tie. Before you think this is just petty revenge from an emotional woman, I continued, smile widening, let me show you one more thing. Slide 5, a digital mock-up of mugs, notebooks, hoodies, all with the phrase just adequate trademark in bold Helvetica. Underneath my Etsy link. The chat exploded. I closed my slides. Anyway, that's my culture share. Any questions? The Zoom was dead silent, until a voice piped up. It was Grace, from legal. Actually, yes. Annie, can you stay on the call for a moment? Everyone else dropped like flies. It was just me, Grace, and the eerie sound of Zoom emptiness. We need to talk, she said flatly. Not here. Conference room B now. I walked in 5 minutes later to find her, Marcia, and surprise, Linda from HR. Linda, who hadn't spoken to me in months, except when she thought I was quitting. They didn't even wait for me to sit. Grace slid a paper across the table. I read the header, Notice of Administrative Leave, Pending Investigation. Effective immediately, Marcia said, her voice clipped. You're being placed on leave. You violated our communication policies, breached internal confidentiality, and introduced unauthorized financial claims. I stared at her. You're suspending me for using my own trademark. We're suspending you, she said tightly, for making a spectacle. I looked at the paper again, and I smiled, because they hadn't seen my post-it yet. It was still tucked in my pocket, waiting for the exact moment to be taped to Marcia's office door. You don't own the narrative anymore. They walked me out like I was radioactive. No dramatic box of belongings, no security escort, just 3 vultures pretending it was standard procedure. Grace from legal tried to soften it. You'll still receive pay pending review, she said, as if hush money came in biweekly deposits. Marcia stood beside her like a botoxed gargoyle, arms folded, daring me to react. I didn't. I just left. Took the elevator down like a queen descending to exile, walked out past the motivational posters in the lobby, integrity is doing the right thing, and straight into the parking garage, where my beat-up Camry coughed to life like it was in on the joke. I didn't go home. I went to Kinko's. Printed 50 high-gloss flyers with the just adequate trademark logo, my trademark number, and a cheerful note. Unauthorized usage of this phrase constitutes a billable offense. See terms at justadequitedani.com. Then I mailed one to each department head. Overnight delivery. Next stop, the local coffee shop, where I sat by the window, opened my laptop, and started digging. If they were going to accuse me of breaching confidentiality, I wanted to see just how confidential their own behavior had been. That's when I found it. Buried in the cached files of the company's Trello board, bless their outdated security, a link titled, Strategic Role Reassignment Q4 Contingency. I clicked. The document was dry, cold, corporate voodoo, but it painted a picture. They'd been restructuring, quietly. Behind the scenes, the plan, move all legacy staff with strong internal influence into non-client-facing roles. Read, bury them. me, Omar from IT, Lydia in customer success, three of the highest performing team leads. All of us had one thing in common. We'd all questioned directives from above. We'd all escalated issues. We were too visible. But the final page is what stopped me cold. A spreadsheet of names, and next to each, one column, risk factor. Another, containment strategy. Next to my name, risk factor, high. Containment strategy, internal ridicule plus HR marginalization. Long-term exit via performance review downgrade or soft push. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. They hadn't just mocked me, they'd planned it. They'd fed the just adequate joke like a virus into the bloodstream of the company to build a narrative that would justify my removal. But now I had it. Proof, and I wasn't alone. I emailed Lydia. Just a subject line, still think it's a coincidence, attached, the spreadsheet. 10 minutes later, she replied, holy shit, did the same thing to me last year. Want in on something bigger? She dropped a Google Drive link and a Burner Zoom invite. The folder was titled Operation Paperclip. Inside, whistleblower statements, screenshots, emails, even audio recordings, all from ex-employees or rather, ex-victims who'd been squeezed out under just culture performance flags. It wasn't a company. It was a reputation machine, factory for sculpting someone's downfall just enough to make it look like their own fault. And now we were assembling the wreckage. I joined the Zoom. 5 faces, former employees, all different departments, all with one thing in common. They'd been branded, discredited, and flushed. Danny, Lydia said, you didn't just trademark a joke. I raised an eyebrow. You trademarked their favorite weapon. And that's when it hit me. The phrase had never been about me. It was about anyone who scared them. And now we were all coming back with receipts. The Burner Zoom turned into a war room. Lydia ran point like she'd been waiting years for this moment, cross-referencing everyone's records, patching timelines together like a forensic quilt. Omar, the IT guy they'd quietly moved to data hygiene, had logs. Real ones. System access records showing who edited what, when. We matched his timestamps to my internal review file. Guess what? Russ, again, logged in 48 hours after the review deadline, which meant my official evaluation, the one that labeled me not promotable due to tone, had been doctored after the fact. I can pull the audit trail, Omar said, sipping his Coke like it was fine whiskey. But if they catch wind, they'll nuke my VPN access and ghost wipe everything. We don't need access, I replied. We just need proof that they knew. And we had it. In one shared folder, former UX manager Devin had uploaded a recording from 2 years ago, back when the company still pretended to care about ethics. It was Marcia, mid-call, coaching a manager on how to give constructive exits. Frame it as a culture mismatch. Avoid hard skills, keep it behavioral. If you call someone average enough times, eventually they'll believe it. I rewound that part 3 times. The voice, the cadence, that smirking tone I'd heard in every one-on-one. Eventually they'll believe it. They'd built their whole org chart on psychological erosion. That night, I made my move. I updated Justediquirdanicom with a full timeline, sanitized, redacted where needed, but packed with dates, documents, and side-by-side comparisons. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. Every single manager involved would recognize their fingerprints. By morning, the site had 2,000 hits. Then 5,000. Then it hit Reddit. r/anti-work. r/female workplace. r/legal advice. Some HR TikTok account with 300K followers turned it into a dramatic reading. I watched it from my couch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping gas station wine. They'd used an AI voiceover and slow piano music, and it somehow made the words hurt worse. By lunch, 3 people I didn't even know DM'd me with their own stories. One from finance, one from legal, and still employed who had the keys to the archive. She didn't say her name, just sent a screenshot of an internal email chain titled, Managing Narrative Risks Daniela M. Escalation strategy attached was a PDF. When I opened it, my stomach flipped. Page 1, an org chart, not the company's, mine. A reputation kill plan with my name in the center, surrounded by bullet points labeled, Control Visibility. Redirect credit, diffuse loyalty, phase out leadership potential. It wasn't damage control, it was a blueprint for character assassination. That was the last straw. No more clever invoices. No more Etsy mugs. I called Lydia. It's time. She didn't ask what I meant. She just said, I've got the media contact lined up, and a friend at the labor board who hates HR. We were done playing defense. Next move was checkmate, and it started with a calendar invite. Subject line, just adequate. I ask a company-wide truth bomb, 9 a.m. Monday location, Zoom, host Daniela M., no password, no cap, no survivors. Monday, 8:59 a.m. I watched the participant count tick upward like a Geiger counter in Chernobyl. 30, then 80, then 150. By 9:02, we were at 270. Entire departments, former employees, anonymous avatars, even a few brave souls from legal, watching like fire marshals at a gasoline convention. My screen stayed dark. No intro music, no welcome slide. Just a title, Narrative Control and Career Containment, a case study. Then I unmuted. My name is Daniela. Most of you know me as just adequate, but what you probably don't know is that I was never supposed to be here long enough to speak. I clicked to the first slide, blacked out faces, but the content blazed. A timeline, emails, Slack messages, voice clips, side-by-side comparison of my original performance review and the altered version. Timestamps courtesy of Omar. Screen recordings with file metadata from multiple sources. Labeled, logged, irrefutable. The chat exploded. WTF, is this real? I remember this project. She ran that entire campaign. She trained my whole team. How was that average? Slide 2, the strategic reassignment document. Containment strategies, color-coded list of targets. Lydia was on this list. Holy shit, that explains my demotion. I left in 2022 after they killed my role. This is it. Then the kill plan. I read it aloud slowly. Control visibility, redirect credit, diffuse loyalty, phase out leadership potential. I was not adequate, I said, meeting my webcam. I was a threat. Not because I underperformed, but because I couldn't be controlled. Somewhere in the sidebar, Marsha's icon appeared. I muted, camera off. I smiled. Now, for those still employed, you should know, retaliating against an employee for lawful speech or labor organizing is a violation of both federal and state employment laws. Which is why every piece of this presentation has already been submitted to the EOC, the Labor Board, and our friends at The Guardian, who were very interested in Operation Paperclip. More avatars went dark, probably directors logging out to scream into desk drawers. But I wasn't done. Final slide, a list of resources, legal aid contacts, whistleblower hotlines, a public-facing Google Drive with redacted materials, open source, time-stamped, synced nightly, and a countdown. 3 days, I said. You have until Thursday to retract every defamatory comment, restore every record you falsified, and issue a public apology to every employee you quietly erased. After that, I go nuclear, including naming names, including the recordings. I leaned closer. Because if I was just adequate, then I shouldn't be able to burn down your entire narrative with one slideshow, should I? I ended the call. Within 10 minutes, HR sent out a vague company-wide statement calling it an isolated incident under review. By lunch, someone leaked it to Reddit. By dinner, it was on Twitter. And by midnight, Just Adequate trademark merch store had sold 843 hoodies. None of this was about money anymore. It was about forcing them to say the one thing they weaponized against all of us. We were wrong. The fallout didn't come all at once. It never does. But the cracks started showing by Friday. First, a retraction on the company's internal Slack, a canned apology. It was weak. An attempt to distance themselves from misunderstandings. Legal language that didn't actually say anything, but we all knew what it meant. The silence before the storm. Then the storm broke. A memo leaked from HR, detailing revised policies for performance evaluation. Turns out, the company was retraining all managers on how to give feedback without creating perception issues. Translation: we're removing the word adequate from the corporate lexicon forever. By noon, the company website was down for maintenance. Just Adequate Adonicom traffic had overwhelmed their servers, and people had begun hitting their corporate portal with questions they couldn't answer. And then the first of the calls came in. Lydia got one from HR, telling her to take a leave of absence for mental health reasons following her involvement in the whistleblower campaign. She laughed. It wasn't a real leave. It was them trying to shut her down quietly. The rest of us didn't let that happen. Omar hacked into the internal documentation systems and emailed me a fresh batch of spreadsheets, data access logs that showed who accessed which files and when. He'd marked out the IP addresses of those who'd tried to delete their involvement. By Monday, we had enough to fill a public lawsuit if they pushed us too far. But I wasn't done yet. I spent the weekend compiling an open letter, final victory lap email that would go out to every single employee in the company, past and present. It detailed everything: the manipulation, the gaslighting, the carefully orchestrated plan to squeeze out anyone who dared to challenge the system. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone they'd ruined along the way. I clicked send Sunday night. It was too late for them to stop it. Monday morning, the legal team sent their first threat. Cease and desist was the subject line. It didn't matter. They couldn't take the truth down. They couldn't erase what we'd built. I opened up a Zoom call for a group of former employees, Lydia, Omar, Devin, a few others who had been quietly blacklisted, and we celebrated. Just Adequate Trademark had officially crossed the line from a joke into an anthem. We made them see us, Lydia said, a little breathless. For the first time, they couldn't ignore us. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. Yeah, and now they'll never forget us. 2 weeks later, the company announced a leadership restructuring and new leadership initiatives. In reality, it was an exodus. The execs who'd been responsible for the manipulation were either quietly moved to new roles or let go in a company-wide shakeup. But the story didn't stop there. A former manager from my team reached out. We're organizing. We're taking it public. That's when I realized this wasn't just a win for me. It was a win for everyone who'd ever been overlooked, underestimated, or erased. People from all over the company were stepping forward, sharing their stories, sharing their receipts. And just like that, Just Adequate Trademark wasn't just a phrase anymore. It was a revolution. The last thing I did was update the site. I took down the invoices, the legal jargon. I replaced it with a quote I'd always believed, no matter how hard they tried to bury it. The only thing more dangerous than someone who knows their worth is someone who knows yours. And on that day, I knew they'd never be able to silence me again. Not me. Not any of us. Because, in the end, no one is just adequate. We were all better than that. And we always had been.